So it's really nice to have you here. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome you to the 18th President's Lecture that we had so far, will have at the Berlin School. So on behalf of the Berlin School, the Art Directors Club, and so forth, a big welcome. The President's Lectures are usually well visited, and we had Jean-Marie Dru here, we had Washington Olivetto here, we had Marcelo Serpa here, Ralf Schmerberg, Miha Pogacnik, Jeff Steinhauer. We had in Tokyo Chichuya-san, the chief designer of Sony. We had Jörg Schönbohm here, German people know him. He was from the Land Brandenburg, the Minister of the Inner. John Haggerty we had here, Seymour Stein, the founder of Sire Records, Joachim Sauter, the president of Art and Com, Jean-Daniel Tirkomarov and Tony Segara, Philip Nielsen, John Hunt from TBWA, Jeff Jarvis from the CUNY Graduate School in New York, Claudia Langer, the founder of Utopia, Kitty Lun in Shanghai. Today we have Dr. Rainer Esser, who sort of is the leader of DIE ZEIT. And the upcoming President's Lecture on September 7th here in Berlin will be, we will have Sir Martin Sorel, who is a pretty well-known person in the advertising business. Not everyone in the room really knows a lot about the Berlin School, and so I thought I'd take 3 minutes and take you through. This is the longest chart here. Our mission is to become the world's leading institute for quality executive education and research into creative leadership. By bringing together top creative executives and international leadership experts, we will pave the way for new standards in communication and leadership, fostering global discourse on creative leadership in media, entertainment, advertising, design, journalism, and marketing. In one word, in a nutshell, the mission is turning great creatives into great creative leaders. Which does not mean that it all has to be creative people, but we want to have more creative leaders in creative industries. And as a vision, we want to have a creative CEO in every creative company, and this can be a man or should be a woman. Just in today's or this week's DIE ZEIT, there is a wonderful article about women in leadership. And in Oslo, it is a quota. They came up in 2003, I think, with a quota where 40% of the board has to be a woman. And I think this is something that really pushes it, but we at the Berlin School also offers women to do something regarding leadership. It's absolutely needed. And when you have take the Oslo experience, those companies that have, and by now they actually have these 40% of women leaders, those companies are more successful than companies that are still a kind of man's world, macho type of organization these days. Now, what we want to achieve is that our participants become better in leading the enterprise, in leading clients and partners, in leading the product quality, in leading the people, in leading themselves, and in leading the industry. That is the simple output focus. What's the input focus? That is, learn more about how to deal with complexity, learn how to use better ways for analysis out of that complexity, learn how to design better strategies about decision making, how to create alignment, and how to implement. That is, we feel, if individuals really perform in this area, the leadership aspect actually shows up in a more simple way. We have a sort of interdisciplinary approach, bringing various creative industries together, like advertising, media, journalism, entertainment, design, and marketing. It is an executive MBA, so it is, in addition to the job everyone has to do, but we make it comfortable. It can be done in 1 year, 5 modules, 14 days, 5 modules within 1 year, or spread over 2 years. We have a global audience. The ideal class, actually, of 25 has a solid mix of those various creative industries and has, let's say, 15 nations participating. We are now slightly over 40 nations that use the Berlin School, but this sort of mix of the interdisciplinary aspect of creative industries and the various nations together actually produce a wonderful discussion to those topics. We have an academic faculty and we have called faculty. The creative faculty actually are volunteers, very accomplished people from around the world that come in for a masterclass or give a president's lecture and engage with the school. Our curriculum is here in Berlin. We have three modules here in Berlin. We go to London for half a week. We go to New York for a week. We go to Los Angeles for a week. We go to Tokyo and to Shanghai for a week. And then the thesis work we are doing is a sort of thread through the 5 modules. And I can tell you that the thesis quality work is getting better and better. It's very much focused on bringing new aspects, challenging, provoking communication as we have today, coming up with new insights and with ideas where you actually can build new expertises around and start, maybe in the last consequence, even a new business. So we have a wonderful case that is a bit of the highlight right now. Marcelo Serpa is the Chief Creative Officer of Alma BBDO in Brazil. And he booked the first participants with Luis Sanchez. Very first participant to the Berlin School, gave it some confidence with it. And he says today, talent isn't synonymous with leadership. The first is impossible to teach, the latter not. The Berlin School's leadership executive MBA helped us develop some of our best creative people into the leaders they are now. And those are 2 people. This is Luis Sanchez, who says, thanks to the Berlin School executive MBA, I realized that Berlin is a place to break all barriers. My wall came down, and I could see a different world full of opportunities. Pretty modest statement. And Sergio Munaini, actually Luis is the art director-based creative director of Alma BBDO, and Sergio Munaini is the digital-based creative director. He said, changed my way of life, how to run business, and how to run my life. I miss the school. Now, this year in Cannes, Alma BBDO took home the Agency of the Year award. They won the most Lions in Cannes, and actually helped also BBDO to be nominated Global Agency of the Year in a big way. And when you now talk with Sergio, with Luis, and with Marcelo, they would relate some of the success to the Berlin School, which is actually nice. The next class coming up, Sir John Haggerty class, will start in September the 5th. And he will serve as the godfather of the class. Previous godfathers have been Keith Reinhardt, Seymour Stein, and John Gold. So that's a little overview. And now I have the pleasure to introduce the waiting man, Dr. Rainer Esser, who with Giovanni Di Lorenzo probably have the most interesting case, not only in Germany, but in newspaper making, weekly newspaper making around the world. I think everyone looks up how they did it, that they managed in these times, in these very complex times, with all these digital challenges, advertising challenges, and so forth, how they managed the paper to move above 500,000 copies a week, which is the highest copy they achieved. And I think we will hear it now. Dr. Rainer Esser. Dr. Rainer Esser, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for your kind and benevolent words, and thank you for coming instead of hanging around in this very nice evening outside and to listen to me for 30 minutes at maximum. Die ZEIT has been founded some 65 years ago by a couple of bright people. They had nothing to do with journalism before, but they wanted to contribute a bit to invigorate this new democracy in Germany, and they did it quite successfully. For 40 years, they were pushed by the founder and owner of the paper, Gerd Bucerius, to all the time to innovate, to bring new ideas, to enrich society through new ideas. And Bucerius was not interested in earning money with Die ZEIT. He was interested in bringing new ideas into society. Well, by the way, he earned money with Die ZEIT, and today we are quite profitable. But the vision of Bucerius and Gräfin Dönhoff and the other people was more intellectual. And this vision to enrich society is still strong as it was 65 years ago. You can well imagine me as manager. I'm also interested in the profitability of the paper, but our editors are more with the vision of Bucerius and Gräfin Dönhoff and the others. For 40 years, the paper grew, and it was a story of success. And then in the early 90s of the last century, our founding fathers became a bit old and became a bit, let's say, careless and a little bit arrogant. And the paper started to decline. I mean, you know, the three major reasons for a company to decline after a long period of growth is first, bureaucracy. When you hire people and you get, I mean, we all know this problem. Each year we become a little bit fatter. Greece is starting here to grow, and then we cannot run as fast as we used to run years before. And this with company exactly the same. You hire people for new positions, and those positions are not directly connected with selling, but with administration. And then there are meetings, and the meetings do not focus about sales, but about the administration. And the other reason is you start to be careless. You you start with new ventures you have not thought about enough before. And the third reason is you become a little bit arrogant. You know, the readers, they change all the time. So you have to change with your readers. Otherwise, you lose them. And this was a major problem with DIE ZEIT in the 90s. They had lost a little bit track with their readers. They had lost the interest to increase, to enrich the paper, to adapt to the changing interests of the readers. So I can cut this short. The very first day, my very first impression of DIE ZEIT, I entered the entrance as big as this room here. On the one hand, there were windows like these windows, but they were hidden. They were with shutters, you know. So you needed electricity all the time, and the carpet was a very dark brown carpet turning green. Turning green because it was maybe 20 years ago that they had done this carpet there. And there was a very old sofa, 30 years old, and there was a yucca palm tree, and they had forgotten to cut the brown leaves. So it was on the very top, there were a couple of green leaves and then brown all down. And the worst was on the left hand. There you saw two elderly ladies sitting behind glass, this thick and green, you know, green, this thick. And the ladies were there sitting behind, and in the corner there was still a telex. Do you know what a telex is? It was used in the 50s and 60s to exchange news. It was still working there. But the worst was, it took a lot of management attention, 4 or 5 months, to seduce the ladies to get rid of this window. And the guy who was in charge for this disaster, he told me, we have to keep this. We have to keep this because, you know, there can be terrorists coming to our paper and shooting at the ladies. And even if they shoot with submachine guns, this glass will not come down, you know. And yeah, I had to explain a couple of times to Betriebsrat and to the ladies and to this guy in charge that on very, very rare occasions, terrorists come to a decent paper and shoot with submachine guns at nice ladies sitting there in the entrance. Well, we took it down. And then the paper at this time, the front paper, was called the Gravestone. The Gravestone because it was all in dark ink and it looked each week alike the week before. And the front article was always written by almost the same person, and he had to write each week almost the same. So it, it was not very attracting to get new readers. And it was a caricature of Molschetz, and it looked each week alike the week before. So you never knew that it was a new copy of DIE ZEIT, which was there at the newsstand. Well, so first thing to do was to start a dramatic change. You cannot, you know, when you're so down, you cannot gradually develop. You have to start with some dramatic issues. The new editors-in-chief, from 1 week to the following, they put color in the paper, but on each page. And they started with this concept of a major topic on the front page in color. And then the incumbent editor-in-chief, Giovanni Di Lorenzo, he came up with the idea, well, you know, people think that men are strong and that men are successful, and but in fact, you know, the boys, they have all the time when they are small, they have to fight. Then they want to seduce girls. They have to drive in their cars, and they drive too fast, and they drink too much, and then they have to work that hard. They have strokes and heart attacks, and then they live 10 years shorter than their wives. So in fact, it's the female who is the strong Geschlecht and not the man. And he wanted to explain this in a series. And whenever we start a series in the paper, we do some publication, some advertising outside on billboards. So we need a strong motive. And he came up with this man to warn me. He said, well, there may be some readers outside who think this is pornography. But Rainer, you as an educated guy, you know this is a piece of art. And I said, well, yeah, it looks very much like a piece of art. Giovanni, please tell me, where is this piece of art? Well, Rainer, you know, as an educated person, this is the ceiling of the Sixtine Chapel in Rome, and this is the Genesis. This is Adam, you know. Yes, of course, I know. And this is when God awakens Adam to mankind. Oh, yes, of course. This is a piece of art. It's no pornography, Rainer. Yes, of course. Well, and then we had this gentleman on 1,000 billboards outside, and, well, I was a little bit anxious. What will happen? And, we got some letters, but there was not a single Kündigung. There was not a single resignation, but we got one letter from a lady, and I would like to share this with you. It was this lady from Starnberg. He said, he wrote to me, Grüß Gott. While I'm not really interested in advertising, I must say that your well-proportioned male model did catch my eye. Even after a long contemplation, this Italian masculine creature is a heavenly distraction. Every time I sneak a glimpse at his very well-defined manly contours, it's an attack on every sensory nerve, and very old memories of strong passion and extreme delight are reborn. My colleagues and I beg you, please send us this handsome specimen in digital form and maybe in other poses. You would make a dream come true if we had him with us to be able to exchange a knowing smile and a wishful sigh. Many thanks for the Dream Man. Then I sent her the Dream Man and some more poses, and she mailed again. Many thanks for the Dream Man. He will brighten up our dreary office days, even though I have to share him with my colleagues. Thank God this man cannot speak. So often has it ruined the dream. Well, learnings from this, we are able and we have to inspire and touch our readers time and again. Each week we have to find a subject beyond, the actuality, the political actuality. We have to define, we have to find topics which inspire you, which thrill you, which make you laugh, which make you wonder, which brings you new ideas. And our great strength in this current crisis is the strong brand. We have been continuously and consciously building this brand, and I do not mean through traditional advertising, but by creating a brand world that the reader can experience. Events and line extensions, I will shortly show to you, that fit our product, help build our image and at the same time are highly credible. The result is a low cost per order to get new subscriptions, as this brand is widely known and very popular. So our idea was, when I came, there was an advertising campaign, and we put this advertising campaign somewhere. Die ZEIT is a nice paper, and buy this paper, you know. But this is nothing. This is something for cigarettes. Sorry, you're in advertising, but cigarettes and cars and new products, the luxury, they have to build a brand, or they have to show the difference from other products. But each week, our paper is now in 500,000 households. This is the best. This is the best advertising. And there we have to invest, and there we have to bring all our resources in, and on platforms where our editors speak to potential readers and show the competence of the paper. This is much more relevant for our growth than normal advertising. Another reason for our success is a flat hierarchy and a strong communication culture. So we have a lot of bright people working at DIE ZEIT, and they are really proud to work there. And Uwe Schuricht here in the front row, he's a dangerous headhunter. He and his friends have not achieved yet to seduce colleagues of me to leave their office. He tries very hard, but he hasn't.
Because he retains me in order to make sure that I don't hunt him.
Over the last 8 years, our circulation grew, and what is more important, our reach grew by more than 60%. And this is very valuable, because the prices we can get for our advertising derives from this growth. Sales revenues grew by more than 50%, and advertising as well. And this is a very decent forecast from last May. We will probably reach a growth of 60% in comparison to the year 2003. And there is an additional column of the business we developed over the last years, in addition to our core business, online, 9 magazines we invented, and conference business, and corporate publishing. So altogether, we doubled our revenues over the last 7 years. Our main strategy over the last 10 years has been to behave as if we already have a crisis. We had the lucky chance to have a very, very existential crisis 10 years ago, and nobody who worked there and nobody who joined the ZEIT in between wants to be in this messy situation again. This is a bit as our senior editor Helmut Schmidt always said, I had the chance, ich hatte die Chance, durch die Scheiße des Kriegs zu gehen. Well, we were not that lucky. Of course, wir hatten keinen Krieg, aber wir hatten eine Krise. And since we had this crisis, we are very much alert not to become ever lazy, to become ever arrogant, or to grow our bureaucracy, or to do things which are senseless. We very much stick to what we do, and we stick to our core competence, and we stick to innovation. This is in the genetic code of DIE ZEIT, to innovate all the time. And this gentleman there on the left, Helmut Schmidt, he called me the other day and said, well, would you please join me for some minutes? I want to ask you a couple of questions. Well, I had a lot of things to do, but as manager at DIE ZEIT, we serve the editorial, so immediately I came to him, and then he asked me for 90 minutes or so about the iPad, about iPhone, about whether we will read in 10 years books on print, on paper, or whether it will be all on Kindle and these devices. And well, this guy smokes all the time, and the windows are always closed. So after 90 minutes was a bit burdensome for me and tiring. But what was the most astonishing, this guy turns 92 in a couple of months, and he was chancellor, and he had a heart attack, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's nearly deaf. And he asked me for 90 minutes about what is going to happen in 10 years with the iPad and Kindle and these reading devices. And this passion, you know, this curiosity. Not all of our editors, not all of the guys of the age of, and girls of the age of 30 are that interested and curious as this old guy, but all of them want to be. He's the big idol of the whole editorial team, and you see our editor there on the right, Giovanni Di Lorenzo, our editor-in-chief. Of course, he is very much conversation with him. He seduces him all the time to write for our paper, because he's the most knowledgeable guy at DIE ZEIT. And what is funny, in the 90s, when DIE ZEIT was declining, then the editor-in-chief was not that much interested to have the old guy to write for our paper. We want to grow, to sustainably grow through ongoing innovation. I said, well, yeah, it's old auntie Zeit. And it was called the Gravestone. But we were the only paper who changed from one edition to the following the layout dramatically, and introducing color on every page. And in former days, when there was a story about Frau Merkel, they would have asked, well, we need a picture of Frau Merkel, yeah? And then there was a picture of Frau Merkel looking a little bit whatsoever, a cheap picture, you know, putting on the paper, that's it. Because as Gräfin Dönhoff always told me, our readers read DIE ZEIT not because of your marketing, and they do not read DIE ZEIT because of pictures, you know, they read DIE ZEIT only because of the content. And the layout is completely without any relevance, because our readers are, she had never talked to a reader, but she exactly knew what the readers she had in mind looked like, you know. Not layout. Well, anyway, so we gradually changed what Gräfin Dönhoff had in mind, and the layout won pretty many prizes in between, and it is one of the reasons of our success. This is a desk portfolio of DIE ZEIT. You know, we are in economy, culture, Wissen, Reisen, Chances, and we introduced 1 year ago Kinderzeit, some pages for kids, and most recently 3 new desks, Glauben und Zweifeln, Religion and Philosophy, Zeit der Leser. This is 1 page written by our readers, and we introduced 2 pages on history. And around Die ZEIT, we built magazines. Of course, online is strongly growing. Merchandising, we started with some encyclopedias, we started e-commerce, we started traveling with Die ZEIT. Then a lot of events. This is a very nice tool to get new readers, to get new subscribers through events and conferences, and we started corporate publishing. I very well remember our first event almost 9 years ago. Michael Naumann, who used to be before Minister for Culture in the government, in the administration of Gerd Schröder, he became editor-in-chief of Die ZEIT, and my boss in Stuttgart, Holzbrinck, Stuttgart, Michael Grabner, he once said to me, Rainer, well, you know, you should do something new. What about editors of Die ZEIT and interesting people on stage? You know, me in Vienna, I did this at Die Burg, and it worked very well. And I said to myself, well, never did this before, this will not work. But anyway, I took all my courage and I wrote to Richard von Weizsäcker, who had just published a book, Dear Bundespräsident, AD, what about presenting your book with an editor of Die ZEIT on stage in Hamburg? And then a couple of days afterwards, the Bundespräsident answered. He said, yes, of course, why not? Then I went to Michael Naumann and said, Mike, the Bundespräsident, he will present his book. He said, yeah, of course, yeah, it's fine. And he will present his book with an editor of Die ZEIT. With whom? And Naumann looked at me and said, Richard von Weizsäcker, that's me. It's of course my job to do this. I said, well, best, perfect. So we did advertising and placate and all this. And 2 weeks before the event, I came to Michael Naumann and said, Mike, this is the book. Which book? This is the book of Richard von Weizsäcker. Yeah, and what? Yeah, it's a book you want to talk with. Yeah, Richard von Weizsäcker, that's me. Yeah, of course, it's me. I said, yes, book. And this is a book. Yeah, God, please. 1 week before the event, I had some pages from other papers about the book. I came to Mike Naumann and I said, Mike, these are critics of the book. Which book? The book of Richard von Weizsäcker, you're going to present, you know, next week. Ah, forget about this book. I know what is in this book, and leave this somewhere there. The very day, 7 o'clock in the evening, and 8 o'clock was the start, Mike Naumann calls me and said, Rainer, there is something here in my notebook. There is an event tonight with Richard von Weizsäcker. Can you tell me anything about it? I said, well, Mike, this is the event, the book you remember 2 weeks ago. Which book? I gave you the book. And I gave you the critics. Yeah. I did not have any time to read neither the book nor the critics. But you, Rainer, we share the taxi to this place. And you are responsible for this event tonight. And you will tell me what is in this book. Well, I tried to tell him a bit what is in this book, and of course, Richard von Weizsäcker, a very knowledgeable, intelligent person, after 10 minutes, he got aware that this gentleman in front of him had never read his book, and he started, well, Mr. Naumann, certainly I will answer your question, but then we will come to my book, because tonight we speak about my book. So, I mean, it was terrible for Naumann. Yeah? He was heavily sweating because everybody in the theater got aware, and it was sold out, of course, everybody got aware that he had not read the book they were going to talk about. But it was a very fun event. We had to laugh an awful lot. And this was the start of a series of events which have increased now to a number of more than 100, and our editors at Die ZEIT, at first, they were not very much inclined, and they were not very much apt and thrilled and educated to perform on stage. So we have to seduce, to do an awful lot of work to seduce them. But now, no problem. They want to be on stage. They like it. And, it's a very nice tool to get new subscribers. Well, and no? Yeah. In addition to our magazines, we have specials and supplements in the paper. The other day on nutrition, 2 tabloids on nutrition, and the circulation went up. It went up by 30% at the newsstand. And then, of course, when Helmut Schmidt turned 90, we had a couple of supplements on his life, and the circulation went up. But the funniest thing we ever did was bringing out an encyclopedia. There was a gentleman, I was in Istanbul at a conference, a newspaper conference, and there was an Italian gentleman sitting there with a laptop, and he said, well, come, young man, I will make you rich, you know. You will sell encyclopedias. I said, well, this guy is crazy, completely crazy. And then he said, well, come over. Then he explained to me, oh, you will sell 300,000 volumes, encyclopedias being worth 300 euros, and you will earn 10 million euros. And he said, this guy must be completely crazy. And the following day, I went to Doan, the big media group, and I talked to a guy there being very responsible for sales, and he said, well, you know, our business is going great. You know, we are so rich, and we bought new companies and online and TV, and all this miracle has been financed through encyclopedias. Wow. He said, you sell encyclopedias? Oh yes, we sold encyclopedias. And you know how many? 1 million encyclopedias. And the next day I rushed to see this Italian guy, and he was there again, and I said, show me again, open your laptop and show me the figures. And he said, you will sell 300,000. And I asked him, well, why only 300,000? Why not 1 million? He said, yes, bright idea. Why not 1 million? And he explained all this to me, how it works. And then I went to Stuttgart to Herrn von Holzbrink, the owner of Die ZEIT, and I said to him, Herr von Holzbrink, we will sell encyclopedias. And he said, that's a bright idea. 10 years ago, we had in a Bücherbund, we sold encyclopedias, and we sold 3,000 encyclopedias. And I said, yes. And show me your figures, sir. Where is your break even? It said, well, Herr von Holzbrink, break even is at 40,000 encyclopedias. And he looked at me, and I got to know he thought that I was crazy. And I said to him, but we will sell 300,000. And then I was at the brink of getting thrown out, because I saw in his eyes, now he was convinced that I was crazy. Well, to make the story short, we started the encyclopedias, and this Italian guy helped us, and we sold 120,000 encyclopedias, but each encyclopedia consisting of 20 volumes. So it was an enormous amount of books we sold, and actually it was the start of a series of editions which all were successful up to now. We never had the same success of selling of making revenues more than 20 million with one edition, and earning 7 million euros with one edition. This was a single shot, We never did this again, but what was also funny, the first volume was free. So everybody got the first volume free who said, I want to have it. Because, you know, what should you do with one volume of an encyclopedia when you have volume 1 and it looks nice? You want to have all. So through this first volume for free, we increased the circulation because you had to buy DIE ZEIT. So we increased the circulation at the newsstand by 120%. This was the all-time high. And we had the tool to generate the following sales. Well, also a very nice introduction was ZEIT magazine. ZEIT magazine used to be a cash cow in the 80s, and then in the 90s, TV, there was a private TV, and all advertising money went away from newspaper supplements into Focus and into private TV, and our ZEIT magazine disappeared. And we reintroduced it 3 years ago, and now it's the biggest driver for new advertising clients. It's the biggest driver in the last years for our growth in advertising. You all know that advertising goes down in newspapers, and despite this development, and thanks to our increase in the circulation, which we heavily communicate, and thanks to the introduction of a new title in addition to the print ZEIT, the big ZEIT, this magazine, thanks to this, we are able to increase our advertising, as I already displayed. This is a series of our magazines, one for students, one for students at schools who do not know what to do after school, one on science, special on science, nutrition, one on history, one for kids, and in addition this fall there will be one for schools. And in addition we have the magazine and the ZEIT magazine, which is a supplement in each edition. These you buy at the newsstand, and we have a supplement 4 times a year on literature, which is also in the whole circulation. Another reason of our success is that we very closely work together at DIE ZEIT. You know, in a quality paper, editors used to look at the management not very nicely, you know, because the editors, they are the crown of the universe. They make the paper, and they are important, and they are standing there in front. And the management is Wasserkopf, you know, it's useless, you know. There's some shabby business selling, you know, selling and marketing. And this may not influence the work, this influence work of the editors. So editors were a little bit reticent in commuting and in communication with the management, because the management responsible for the dirty work, they could divert the valuable work of the editorial. And the editorial works for mankind, management works for money. Well, so in a lot of papers, still today, editorial and management work very much parallel. They communicate not very much, they work in parallel universes. I mean, the CEO or general manager and the editor-in-chief, they communicate talking about figures and budgets, but the work, the daily work, is very much apart. And we started, and at DIE ZEIT, what the editors write is completely independent, never influenced by management or by advertising clients. But the projects they have in mind. We operate very closely together. When they have a project, we think together how we can put this project into operation and how we can market this project. So editorial and management are in a constant communication. And of course, editorial is very much involved to explain the paper to our advertising. I may just give you a brief example of this. We had invited the Bundesgeschäftsführer des Bundesverbandes der Plastikverarbeitenden Industrie. This is the guy who is in charge of the Association of the Plastic Manufacturing Industry. And we had invited this gentleman to Atlantic, a nice hotel in Hamburg, and the evening before, our advertising chief and me, we entertained this gentleman, we talked and we chatted and we had wine, and the following day a visit to DIE ZEIT was planned, and the top of the events, the holy shrine, was the talk, the conversation with the editor of DIE ZEIT, then Michael Naumann, at 9:30 the following morning. At 8:30, I was eating my muesli at home. I got a phone call from Mike Naumann. He said, "Rainer, where are you?" I said, "Well, I'm at home eating muesli." He said, "Well, Rainer, it's nice that you eat muesli. But me, I'm already sitting in my office because of you, because here it's written, this plastic man and Rainer being in my office at 8:30. And I should now talk to this plastic man. Who are you? You are eating muesli, and I got up this morning very early to talk with you and this plastic guy. And I tell you, Rainer, when you're not here within the next 5 minutes with this plastic man, forget about him. Forget about him." And you may think this is a moment of crisis and of high alert or whatever. When you know DIE ZEIT and when you know our editors, you know this is business as usual. So I finished my muesli, came to Mike Naumann, 5 minutes to 9, and he was very charming, very charming. We talked about whatever. And after 5 minutes, he said, "Well, Rainer, you now think you're nicely talking with me, and I want to see this plastic guy. Therefore, forget about it. Yeah? You were not here at 8:30, so no plastic talk today. Yeah? 10 minutes afterwards, 9:15, we talked about business, about advertising. We're approaching the topic of the day. We talked about advertising. It's very, very hard to sell advertising. You know, Pete Gottschalk, yeah, you know, it's not easy nowadays. And so we talked, we narrowed the subject. And 9:25, we talked about plastic. And 9:30, we have bells ringing always at each side. There are 2 churches close by. So the bells were ringing. Mike Naumann looks at me, "Rainer, it's 9:30. Is this plastic man really important for us?" And I said, "Yes." Does advertising? I said, "Yes, of course." Important advertising? Yes, very important advertising. Then, Rainer, what do we do here right now? Let's join the plastic man and talk about plastic and about the virtues, the values, and about the strengths of DIE ZEIT immediately. Then he took his jacket, told his secretary, "I come back in 2 hours." And we went together to see our chief advertising seller, who was there with his very distinguished Hauptgeschäftsführer of the Bundesverband der Plastikverarbeitenden Industrie. And Mike Naumann explained to him how he should run his business at this association of the plastic manufacturing industry. And he listened very carefully, and he talked about advertising and about the strengths of DIE ZEIT. And I do not have to explain to you that this was a very successful trip for all of us. This is how it works at DIE ZEIT. Well, digital, we discovered digital. We were not the first mover, we were not the second mover, we were almost the last mover. But we were not too late. So 2 years ago, we started to heavily invest in ZEIT Online. Magario Garcia, the famous guy, said, ZEIT after our last relaunch, ZEIT Online is a wonderful example of what simplicity, elegance, and good navigation can do. This is like a Ritterschlag. Yeah? Well, to be serious again, as we started so late, we did not commit some mistakes our partners in the market did to have alerts all the time. I mean, build is something different. When you build, you're accustomed to have a lot of flashing alerts and so. But Die ZEIT is a serious quality paper, like Süddeutsche Zeitung, like FAZ, and there you're accustomed to simplicity, to elegance, and to good navigation. And we started immediately with this, and others now follow. This means, this is a nice chart, but we grow very strongly. I mean, our basis is a bit lower than that of FAZ, Spiegel, Stern, Welt, Focus, Süddeutsche. It's much lower, but we grow stronger. So this gap in absolute figures will briefly close down.
What year? What year?
Next year?
Next year.
He's laughing. Eh? Welt Online is much ahead of ZEIT Online, but the gap is narrowing gradually. I talked about editions, Encyclopedia. We did many more many more editions, travel, merchandising. I talked about the events. All the important guys come to ZEIT events. Conferences, we started this business 2 years ago, and now it's a number of 10 conferences. There we get as well new subscribers. We can show our competence in fields where we are not yet in the public opinion so competent, and we earn some money with it. Corporate publishing, we started last year. We are there in the field of science and university, which is a strong competition field of DIE ZEIT, and where we have a lot of contacts as well. So it fits perfect to our brand. In this print business now says, well, the young readers, we lack young readers, and young people do not read. This is rubbish. Young people read, but you have to come to them. We cannot expect that a 13-year-old guy reads DIE ZEIT. I mean, he's not that much interested in politics. He's interested in football, he's interested in playing, and he's interested in books which fit his interests. And so we have to offer him something where he starts with DIE ZEIT. I already mentioned we have a Kinderzeit, 2 pages each week in DIE ZEIT, covering issues being of interest for kids at the age of 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Then we have a lot of books for them, editions, best children's books. We have a children's books prize. We have a magazine for kids. We have an encyclopedia for kids. We are very strong in schools with ZEIT in der Schule and ZEIT Online in der Schule. More than 200,000 kids get DIE ZEIT for 4 weeks each year. And the teachers conduct the lessons with material we provide for them. We have a Zeitstudienführer, a magazine for students at schools just before the end to find out what they're going to study. We have Zeit Campus is a magazine for students covering only being written by students and covering only subjects being of interest for students. We have a big day where more than 10,000 persons read in schools to young kids with books we provide them of being part of our Zeit edition, children books, and we have more than 50 events at universities. So when you're 25 and you're in university, we make sure that at least 5, 6, 7, 8 times you have had a connection with die Zeit. So it's not the price, the much better price we provide them. They have to pay for the Zeit subscription. It's more the fact that we had a lot of points of contact between our brand and the student. So when he subscribes to die Zeit, he had already a lot of contacts with our paper before. And therefore, we have no difficulty whatsoever to get new subscribers at universities. We have now the peak with 40,000 student subscriptions. We reached our historic peak. The very end, there is an iPad. Pete Gottschalk is smiling because Springer is very strong in these new developments, but Springer is a very strong and big publishing house. We are a small and decent publishing house, and so we are not the first mover. This is more his field. We are not the second, but maybe the third or fourth mover. We started with our iPhone apps in these days, and within the next 4 months we will have a couple of iPad apps. And to wrap it up, we love online. This is not a competition for us. This is not a strange devil we would like to put back into the basket. We love online because we doubled our reach through online. We love the iPad. This is a perfect tool to read die Zeit in a digital way, much nicer than to have it here on the laptop. We love iPad, and I'm pretty sure, I'm very convinced that we will get a lot of subscriptions through the iPad, and that we will further increase our reach through the iPad, because it's a very nice device. You can play with it. It's very nicely to work with it. It's easy. It's like playing. It's playing and reading at the same time. And so the future is bright future.
Great. So I think we're prepared to have questions. Do we have a mic?
So based on what the Berlin School of Creative Leadership is trying to accomplish, when do you think an editor at the site will become CEO?
Well, 10 years ago, an editor became a CEO. I'm an editor. I was at Journalistenschule in München, and I have an education as editor.
Well, there's another editor that became CEO, which is Dr. Döpfner at Springer. And the word is, since he is CEO, the management begins to read poetry and goes to interesting movies in order to have a discussion, a basis with Dr. Döpfner, and that really begins to change the culture. And so, I mean, Dr. Esser and Giovanni Di Lorenzo. Yeah? So you're speaking the same language. So that's really good news, and I'm sorry that I didn't point it out. Happy that you asked the question, Robert. Next question.
So you pointed out earlier that the ZEIT started off with a big idea, like reinvigorating new democracy. I just wonder, what is the big idea for the bright future you were talking about?
Well, what a difficult question. Marvelous question. I have to think about. So the vision was to help the new democracy. And what is our vision today? Well, it's a grown-up democracy, but the topics with which we thrill our readers are still topics subjects which are exciting in society. I mean, we are not that much about. I mean, Bild Zeitung, Dieter Bohlen, yeah, is a very strong connection. Or Bild Zeitung and football is a very strong connection. Things we all like, yeah, football very much. Die Zeit and football is not a very strong connection. It's more what you explained pretty early. For instance, you read in the paper in our current issue about women and jobs. You know, this is a very important subject matter in our society now. Between men in top positions, women in top positions, how does this work? Or the other day we had a subject about reading, whether our society gets impoverished more and more because people do not read that much. Our editor said, complete nonsense. We read more than ever. I mean, not on paper, often digital, but we read. These are the subject matters we cover. Or, of course, every third issue, it's a political question we put on the front page, because politics is still very important. Economy is very important. When we had the crisis, we explained the crisis, but not as Handelsblatt would do it. Experts explain the crisis to experts. Was more experts explain the crisis to educated teachers or educated people working in the cultural business.
If I can build on that question, if you would have to articulate the audience of Die Zeit and the mission of the Zeit, how would you explain it in a sentence? Who are the people? And we had a very interesting chat before, because you're saying people come in and people go out all the time. So it's a kind of moving audience. But if you go to the heart, I mean, BMW would say, those are the people that drive on the overhaul lane in its last consequence. That is what Hahnemann came up in the 60s. I want the driver of my car drive on the overhaul lane. Or let's say Volvo, it's safe. It's all about safe. So the direction to the engineers is to build a kind of a tank, a bit of a tank, or for BMW, that the Mercedes driver in the 60s understands when he looks at the rear mirror that this guy wants to overhaul me, you know? So this psychographic target, which is probably very important that you understand it. So how would you explain it to us? Who are the sight readers? who is ZEIT? What is the heart of the product?
The typical ZEIT reader is a person who are very much interested in society, in improving himself, in improving society, in getting better educated. Of course, he's also interested in earning money, but earning money and being rich is not his first approach to life. His first approach to life is to be a valuable citizen.
Like Mr. Schmidt also. I mean, he is a kind of the personification of this sort of person in a way. Yeah?
When you look at the editorial at Die ZEIT, we do not pay the highest wages, by far not. And there are people like Uwe Schuricht who always want to seduce journalists of Die ZEIT to go to Der Spiegel or to Der Spiegel or Der Stern, where they pay higher wages. But they stay. They stay because they have this vision. Other papers, I mean, very respectable papers, all which I mentioned are very respectable papers, but their vision is a bit different from ours. And they like this vision, and they have a lot of independence. There's not an editor-in-chief who tells you, I do not like your article, please rewrite it again. He will say, well, you could enrich your article a bit, more facts, more figures, but he will never tell you to change it, to have a new objective, to introduce something new in your article, a completely other opinion. He will never say this to you because he has a high esteem for you. He respects your opinion, and this is something pretty unique at our paper.
Access to websites.
Sorry?
The Times.
The Times, yeah.
Recently started charging people to access their content online. What do you think about that? And do you think you'd ever do it?
Oh, I think it's really great that they did it to show us again that it does not work. So, I mean, always people coming up and telling we should charge. Yeah, let them charge. You can, of course, you can charge for certain content you provide when this content is unique, is valuable, and not valuable is much content, but unique. You can only charge for something people want to pay for, and they want to pay for unique information. You know that, for instance, you know Bloomberg. Bloomberg, the terminals of Bloomberg, of Reuters, they have very, very unique, valuable information on the markets, how gold will develop. Not next week, we have this information as well, but the next hour. You have on the terminal, you see, oh, gold price will go up in the next hour, and next minute you buy gold. Then you can charge for this information, of course. It's valuable, it's unique, it's quick. But for political opinions, I'm very reticent to recommend charging for this.
So for you, it's a supporting medium so far that at the end converts into people that are buying Die ZEIT as a physical paper. And then you have the interconnection with the journalists where people can sort of chat with and have opinions. But my question would be, what does it cost you so far? What is allocated for doing that?
Well, when I look at our online business and I take into consideration all the benefits we derive from it for the whole publishing house, I would say we break even. When I look at only at the figures, we are still pretty much deficitaire. But this is a gap, this gap between profit and debt is getting, each year it's getting narrower and getting thinner, and all the advantages. I mean, in a couple of years, the digital business will be much more important than today, and we are now in a stronger and stronger position to take to have then a good running business. So each euro we invest in online now is good invested, well invested.
If you look at sort of like what Wired Magazine does with its iPad app and the amount of user engagement, how the sort of, you know, the interaction with the content has changed, will you never charge for that one? Wired Magazine charges, I think, for subscriptions on iPads. Won't you charge for that?
Yes, of course.
But that's digital, isn't it? So why is the Times doing something wrong? Are they just preparing people for what they'll do with the iPad by charging for the digital content already?
Well, that's something different. The app and what you provide online, it's different. I mean, in an ideal world, we would have started 15 years ago to charge. I mean, Die Welt, Süddeutsche, FAZ, Stern, ZEIT, if they all had started by charging at the very start of the online world, would be nice now. We could further charge, but we did not. We did not. It is as it is right now, so we cannot start charging for something we provide, but which other papers as well provide for free. This will not work. I mean, local papers, they can charge for local news when they are the only provider of local news, digital, in a digital way in their neighborhood. But we with our overall news, which can be not by the depth of the quality, but by the information, be replaced by others, we cannot charge. We can charge for special areas where we are unique, and special services which we offer, which are unique and which are valuable for the readers. But the iPad app, it's different. They're all start now. This mistake we did 15 years ago, we do not want to continue. We don't want to do it again. So we start charging. And there is a system through, you know, through Apple that we can charge when it's an app. There's a pay system behind it.
I have a question about the change that you made, because normally we Germans love to stick to something that we've done like 5 years ago. We've done it like that, so we love to do it the same way. So it would be interesting to hear, how did you implement the change? I understood you did it quite fast, or was it like der Erfolg gibt Ihnen recht? Or did you have a certain strategy to implement the change, the sudden change?
Well, when you're 1 meter below the surface and you're endangered of drowning, it's easier to introduce change than when you're at the top of the universe. And it was pretty clear 10 years ago, when ZEIT was in deep trouble, that we have to change an awful lot. And we had the chance to hire a good many of new journalists and a good many of new managers and sales force. And
Did you use Uber?
sorry?
Did you use Uwe Schuricht for that?
Yes, he helped us also, yeah. He helped us a couple of times. He did a very good job. No, I mean, it's when first you have to tell everybody we have to change dramatically, otherwise we are in very deep trouble, and you know that we are in very deep trouble. So the sense of urgency must be overall. Then you need a couple of people who are able to not only to know this we have to change, but who really change, to bring things into action. And then you have to keep the spirit of permanent innovation, of permanent change in the heads.
I mean, the moment things go up, the so-called low-hanging fruits, which really can be organized, then the organization suddenly experience that this change really pays out and that you're on the road to some success.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in the positive sense. When now somebody comes up and says, why should we change again? And all the time these innovations, I'm fed up. I can tell him, well, maybe that you're fed up, but look at our growth, look at our increases, and look at our success. These are the fruits of this permanent innovation we have in our publishing house. And this is convincing. Even Betriebsrat has no problem with permanent change.
Another question about the online users and the readers of the site. How many online users read the site and vice versa? And the second question, is it hard to build up credibility as an online medium, being a weekly newspaper? Meaning being always on top of the news.
Yeah, a very good question. The first one, 25%, 30%, it's the same with all other papers, or with all other quality papers, Süddeutsche, Spiegel, Focus, Welt, they all have something like 30% overlap. And the second question, for a weekly newspaper to build a credibility as a medium, as an online medium, we had to try hard to build this credibility, because for almost 10 years what we produced online was very much alike what we had in the paper. So at first we needed a strong and a completely independent editorial team at ZEIT Online, independent from ZEIT Print. It would have never worked telling the print editors, and now online as well. You read some articles every 5 minutes when something happens. You write the article on this event. This would not have worked. So we needed to start and to build up this credibility, a strong, independent online editorial. But this worked. Now we are as quick as Süddeutsche and all our partners in the market.
How often do you change the news during the day?
All the time. When I look at our front page, I have a TV set in front of me, and when I look at it every 15 minutes, I see a new picture.
Okay. So you talked about changing this kind of layout also. So you had this crisis in the 90s, and I would argue that a lot of papers had this. And I would be interested if you had some specific problems, because if you look at, so for example, in the 90s also Focus appeared on the scene. And Focus, I think, was one of the first magazines that introduced this kind of different kind of layout thing. And it was going very much against Spiegel. And after some years also, Spiegel changed the layout. It introduced color pictures and so on. And I was, at one point of time, I looked into a Jahrgang of the Spiegel from 1990.
Oh, it looked awful, huh?
And I was amazed because I couldn't tell the difference from 1955. but then, in this 10 years, basically from 1990 to 2000 or whatever, a lot of things changed. So, and I think also other papers had the same problem. Was the crisis you had as ZEIT part of that, or did you have some specific problem with your readers? Because I would argue that your readers are a little bit different than the other ones. So I don't think that you have a competitor, a direct competitor. So had you specific problems at this point of time, or was it?
No, what was really astonishing, you learn. You always learn that you should be very careful with the new layout. And you learn that you should be very careful with introducing color into the paper because the reader should gradually get aware of this. And you have all followed the discussion within the community of Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitungsleser. They introduced a red spot on the front page. It was a revolution. They got a lot of resignations of subscribers, and they hated it. Huh? There was not a single person writing, "Oh, this is nice, you introduced a red spot on the front page." Only those who hated it, they wrote letters, and only a red spot. And we changed completely, really dramatically, as much as you can change the layout of a paper, and our readers were not really offended, or did not lead to a resignation of subscriptions. It was, I mean, this is maybe what Gräfin Dönhoff said. Our readers read Die Zeit because of the content, and the content was still there. It was heavily enriched through pictures and color, but the content remained the same. So maybe she was right in this respect.
I'm a former journalist myself, so I'm really intrigued with this change management process. You revealed that you also brought in new people. Was it most difficult to then take the people that had been in the newsroom a long time and convert them, retrain them, give them new tasks? How much pushback did you get internally when you were trying to implement this change? Or were they the ones to say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here, we've been wanting this for years"? I'm just curious to know this sort of internal process you had to fight. I'm sure it wasn't easy.
Well, when I started at Die Zeit, I think there was not a single person telling me, "Thank God that you are here right now. We waited for somebody like you." Not really, not really. But at the same time, despite the fact that Die Zeit was pretty laid back and in a nasty position, in a bad position, there were always intelligent and knowledgeable people working there. They needed a push, a constant, permanent push. And with intelligent people, it's better to try to argue with them and four eyes conversations. It's better to talk to them, convince them, than to stand in front of them and telling them, "Now we have a new strategy, innovation, constant, getting better." And they say, "Well, this guy is crazy. This does not work." At Die Zeit, there are people who have ears and eyes, and they know what's going around, what is happening around them, but you have to convince them. They're intelligent and they want to be convinced. And maybe my education as editor helped me a bit to find the right language to convince some of them.
I think to say just a couple of sentences, a couple of feedback. You have discovered that you have a very rich, a very strong, a well-defined brand, and you were not lazy, and you took the crisis as an opportunity to get closer to your audience and do more for them. So even if you invest in online and you don't get a payback, but you deliver to the people content, you give them something very special. And coming back to the founders, very important, you help them educate themselves for a better society. And on one hand, this is, I think, what everyone should find with his product in order to create these meaningful brand these days. And on the other hand, if it's done well, there's even business and rewards in it. So I think we've all learned some down-to-earth thinking with how to manage the day and how to excite all people invested for the future of a brand without big slogans, but with deeds. And I mean, coming back to the information you gave me at a certain point of time, that you have had 52 promotions within 1 year, and each promotion was focused like Kinderzeit or the double page for Switzerland, double page for Austria, and so forth. So that is a lot of work, and you got the fruits and you reap the success, and I think it's fantastic learning for creative leadership coming from an editor of such a brilliant product. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Super. And thank you so much for coming, taking your time out of a beautiful summer night, being here with us. Thank you.